Someday, the high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metzer. We've got a great new show here kicking off 2023 with two events going on. One fella that will be first up, Kevin Bowe, has a new record out, and we're going to play a track off of that, and then we're going to interview a fella named Rob Hillstrom about tonight's music from Big Pink show, The Last Waltz Tribute. But first up, an old friend of mine who I've known for, we won't even say for how long, Mr. Kevin Bowe. He's a longtime Minneapolis musician. He's also an amazing producer. He's got a very cool recording studio where he spent a lot of time in. He was also the man that discovered Kid Johnny Lang and wrote a few of his first hits. And he's got a new record out by his band, the Okima Prophets, and he's going to tell you all about it. Kevin, how are you tonight?
I'm great. I am actually great. I'm watching the snow here in South Minneapolis in Tangletown.
Yeah. Well, tell us about tell us a little bit about your history for those few people out there in the Wall of Power Radio Hour land that haven't heard of the great Kevin Bowe. You got, I believe, the first time you and I kind of started hanging together, and I think we might have even done a few shows with your band Summer of Love. Now, was there something before that?
No, that's when I started seeing you play out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I just go see you play. So that's what, mid 80s.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then, that band was, well, Paul, it was a band.
Yeah.
Look at you. It's like a friend of mine says, look at you. You have a band.
Well, let's think back at that early 80s, mid 80s. Minneapolis was really on fire, not only in terms of bands like Soul Asylum and The Replacements and Husker Du that were getting nationally recognized, but as you well know, there was music 7 nights a week in the bars, in the nightclubs in Minneapolis. Great time to get a band started.
It was amazing. And I was young and dumb, and I didn't realize. I thought, this is just what life is like everywhere.
Right.
I didn't realize that I was in a magical place in a magical time because of, the whole Replacements, Husker Du, Jayhawk, Soul Asylum thing on one side and the whole Prince thing on the other side. I was joked that in 84 or 85, when the Purple Rain movie came out, people were, you remember this, moving to Minneapolis.
Right.
From all over the world because they mistook that film for a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got here and realized that it's just a bunch of dogs pooping out in the snow.
And
it's different than the movie.
It's funny. Back when I had my band Cats and the Stars broke up in 1984, and my first record, Paper Tigers, was coming out, and I used most of the Cats on that record, and then hired 3 of them to be in the new Paul Metzer group, so it was kind of a seamless segue. And there was a guy named Charlie Alcox who moved to town, 350-pound blind keyboard player, but like a lot of the, I had hired 2 or 3 African-Americans to play in the band. And it's funny, a lot of the African-Americans, black guys that you met back then, whether or not they would all say, I'm cousins with Prince.
It's a big family, isn't it?
It was a big family. And then, of course, he produced a band called The Family. So now Now, who are you going out to see? Because I think back then, your new record is called, the track we're going to play is California Sober, and we'll talk about that. But you've been sober for years, but back then you were probably still drinking a little bit. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No. I got sober. You're going to laugh. I'm just going to prepare. You're going to laugh at me. I got sober while I was still at the end of high school, senior year in high school.
Wow.
And, typical thing, you hear your name called on the intercom. Will Kevin Bowe come to the office, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. I was completely wasted. I was a 70s, Led Zeppelin pothead,
Right.
typical. Like my high school, was like Dazed and Confused the movie, right? It was like that. So I went to the office, and there was a huge, everyone I ever met in my life was doing a big intervention. I was like, holy crap! So it was that whole story. And so my sobriety date was 420. And I tell kids now, in the 70s, we didn't need a national weed day. We just called it day.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a day that ended in Y, right?
Right, exactly. Quite literally.
It's
So my whole, I've never actually had a drink in a bar.
wow.
Because I got sober so young. I quit playing live like 7 years ago, but I've spent my whole life playing in bars for all these people who appear to be having a really great time.
Well, good for you. You were kind of at the head of the class, so to speak, in terms of musicians getting sober. Now, as the years gone on, musicians that have always been slagged for being the druggies and the alkies, really the majority of the people we know in the music business are primarily sober now.
I guess. I mean, I never even think about it anymore. I got caught because I was a slow runner. You know what I mean? And so it's like the cops come, and I'd be always, in the back. It's like, oh, we'll just get him. That's what ended my career. But it's been so long now. It's been like 43 years. I don't think about it. But the California sober thing came about because I was working with this kid, and he told his publisher, who told my publisher, yeah, I'm really excited about working with Kevin because he's sober, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And he was doing some cool stuff in Nashville. And so I went over to his house, and he's like, yeah, I'm really excited to work with you. I'm sober, too. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Again, it's not something I really think about anymore. But
Right.
And he proceeds to tell me about it while he pulls out this bong the size of New Jersey. And he's just hitting on this thing. And I was like, well, what's this? And that's when someone explained to me, oh, yeah, it's California sober. Like if you're on really bad way, you're on opiates or whatever, and and you get off that, but you still smoke weed or still drink or whatever.
Right.
That's California sober. And I just thought, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. That's the best phrase I've ever heard in my life. And so that's where the song.
That's fantastic. And we're going to be listening to it at the end of this interview with the great Kevin Bowe. There's a funny story. John Bream did a book called Dylan Record by Record, something like that. And he would have two people discuss different Dylan records. And I was a big fan of Bob Dylan's Under the Red Sky, which is not a very popular record among Dylan fans, but I love it, absolutely adore it. And so there was one of the conversations that he had in the book was with Rick Ocasek of the Cars and Ike Riley from Chicago. I don't know if you know about Ike.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
a kind of working
Riley,
man's,
Assassination.
punk rocker, great songwriter. And he was talking about how he and his buddies were down in Chicago with the Cars that just came out with whatever that record was, and they were listening to it on cassette, of course, in their car, smoking weed, and they get pulled over by the cops, and the cops come over and they open the window and plumes of smoke like a part of a Cheech and Chong movie, and the officer goes, "Do you guys have any cannabis?" And Ike goes, "No, officer, just a little weed."
Oh, that's classic.
The good old days. So tell us now. Let's talk a little bit about Johnny Lang, because you are kind of the guy that brought Johnny to prominence. How did that all come about?
Well, it was kind of like Columbus discovering America. There were quite a few native people here who already knew that it was here.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a random gig with a band I was in. Horrible gig. It was like, you'll relate to this, Paul. It was 20 below, not including the wind chill.
Yeah.
February, playing at a club called Playmakers in Fargo. Nobody cared about my band. My band is already on the part of the band career where we all hate each other.
Right.
Like the honeymoon's over.
Well, and what a place to break up at Fargo. My God.
Oh my! I mean, just everything, the worst of everything. And we were at this Playmakers Club where it's like they have big TVs with sports on them and fried food and beer, and nobody's paying attention to the band. And we got there, and there was a band sound checking that was going to play with us, and it was this kid Johnny Lang, and he had only been playing guitar for 9 months, but he pretty much had all the skills that he ever like had in his career.
Right.
He was just unnatural. And he was sound checking, and I had this, I felt like I was on LSD or something, because I was like, I hadn't felt that feeling since I saw the Replacements' first gig ever.
Wow.
And I knew that I was in the presence of
Greatness.
Well, that was actually confusing, because I was like, this is the worst band I've ever seen in my life. Why do I love them?
Right.
I am confused. But with Johnny, it was very obvious that I was in the right place at the right time and witnessing something. I mean, you didn't have to be an A&R guy to, and there was a bunch of their people there in Fargo that already knew that he was amazing.
And what was he, about 16 at the time or something?
14.
Wow.
13.
Wow.
He was 13, I know. He looked, when he got up on stage, he looked like a deer standing up for the first time, like where their arms and kids get that age where they're like their arms and their legs are too long for their body. He looked like a colt or a little deer. And he had this Princess Leia haircut. He just looked ridiculous when he started playing and singing. And I was like, and I'd already gotten my first cut as a writer. Then I had written a song for Kenny Wayne Shepherd. And so we started talking, and he thought I was a really big deal because I had written for Kenny Wayne Shepherd. I remember thinking, you are going to eclipse Kenny Wayne Shepherd. You are way beyond that. And so we just got to be pals, and I invited him to come to Minneapolis and, write songs together. And so we did. And then I hooked him up with David Z, my producer friend that I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
He had gotten me that Kenny Wayne Shepherd cut. And so that was another one of my most stupid career moves. It's like, oh, let me introduce you to my more talented and powerful friend so you can produce the record.
So he can make all the money.
Yeah, right. But I wasn't a producer by any means back then, so it was the right thing to do. I was just a writer. So we wrote a bunch of songs together, and we did those 2 records on A&M, which is kind of cool because the way A&M did it, they just sent the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, call us when the record's done. There was no interference. There was not even any interest. They just knew, they thought, you'll get it right. And we did. There were 2 double platinum records. The second record we did in Minneapolis, and Richie Hayward from Little Feat was on drums, and Steve Cropper was on guitar.
Wow.
And I got to come in and play guitar on a couple of songs that I had written. And it was overall a really, really fun and easy experience.
I remember when he started to do some gigs at Bunkers, because James Klein, who officed above Bunkers, and his lovely significant other Jackie owned Bunkers with her brother James as well. And I went and saw him, and he was really a handsome kid on top of it, about being a great player and singer. And he goes, "What do you think?" And I said, "Get him acting lessons immediately, because after he does a couple records, man, this guy's movie star looks as well."
He could have. You're right. He could have. He was in that Blues Brothers, that's awful Blues Brothers like redo movie.
Yeah.
And he had a very tiny part in that. But then I remember him saying to me at the time, "I hate acting. I don't want to do it." And I was like, "Well, you should, And he's like, "No, I hate it." He was just focused on music, I guess. But making those records was so easy. It was just so easy.
Well, let's talk about some other musicians that have recorded your Kevin Bowes songs.
Let's see. Live or dead? Let's start with the dead ones, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's start with the dead ones, Paul. Etta James did 4 of my songs on an album she won a Grammy with. The album's called Let's Roll. Joe Cocker, his last record, he cut a song of mine.
Wow.
Let's see. Three Dog Night.
Man.
About 3 of them are gone now. But Three Dog Night. John Mayall. He's still alive, right?
Wow. Yeah, he is.
He's still alive, which is amazing because he's got to be getting up there.
I think he's like 86 or 87.
Wow. Leonard Skinner. Most of them are dead, and the version of Skinner that I wrote with to get that cut, a couple of those have died since then. I don't know how they get anyone to be in that band, Paul, because it's a death sentence.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how they if they ask you to join Skinner, don't do it. Say no.
It's like the Grateful Dead have had 3 keyboard players and they're all dead.
Don't ask, don't take the gig.
Well, how about the living ones now?
Well, I'll tell you what my memory isn't what it used to be, which is I'm grateful for that every day.
Right, exactly.
Lately, I've been working with this great singer in England, northern England, middle of nowhere, named Courtney Hadwin. She made
Okay.
a big scene about 4 years ago when she was 14. She sang "Hard to Handle," the Otis Redding song
Sure.
that the Black Crowes had the big hit with, on Britain's Got Talent. And she just, I mean, you watch the video online. Just Google Courtney Hadwin, and it'll come up.
And how do you spell Hadwind?
Hadwin.
Okay.
And so since then, for 4 years, she's been kind of messed around by the music business, had different managers and labels and stuff like that. And no one knew what to do with her because she's a rocker. She's a rocker. I mean, she sings, I mean, Janis vibes and things like that. And so the mainstream music business now, all they really know how to do is pop, because anything that's soulful or weird or off the beaten track, as you know, is done indie. So she got out of her last deal, and now she hasn't been able to put out any music for 4 years, and she's got hundreds of thousands of fans on social media and stuff like that, and they've been patiently waiting or impatiently waiting. And we just have her first song coming out in probably about a month. It's called Breakable, and I just finished mixing that this morning, and that's something we wrote together.
Wow.
So we're going to be putting out a few things. And then there's a band in Pittsburgh called the Ghost Hounds that spent a bunch of the last year on the road opening for the Rolling Stones here and in Europe. And I have co-written and co-produced 4 albums for them in the last 3.5 years.
Do they hook you up with backstage passes when the Stones come to Minneapolis?
You know, I never do the backstage thing because it just, I don't know. It just, I mean, it was nice. I went and saw them open for the Stones in Washington, D.C. and in L.A., that new stadium in L.A., the SoFi Stadium. That was pretty impressive. And so I got it up into one of those boxes, you know.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me because the food is usually excellent. But going backstage, I don't know. There's something about it I don't like. You know what I mean? Like at some point, if you're backstage, someone is going to come up to you and say, "You're not supposed to be here."
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, hey, if I want abuse like that, I can get that at home. I don't need to go out.
So, Kevin, let's talk a little bit about the Okima Prophets now. When did you guys put out your first record?
Oh, man. It's been a long time because there's been a lot of incarnations of that band. You know,
Well,
so I don't even remember.
You know, I was always curious, and I need to ask you how you came up with that name because, of course, the original Okima Prophet is Woody Guthrie, who was born and raised in Okima, Oklahoma. So how did you come up?
In his book, in Bound for Glory, the Okima Prophet he talks about in his book is the town lunatic. And this guy, when he was growing up, used to stand in the town square and kind of proselytize and preach to no one, just nonsense. And so they kind of, I guess, affectionately but kiddingly called him the Okima Prophet. And I thought about when I read that, you and me, Paul, we're writing these songs. You know, we put our hearts into these things. These songs are really important to us, and they're dealing with issues that are important to us, people and feelings and stuff like that. And we get out there in these bars, and we're singing our hearts out, and those people are drinking and ignoring us often. And I thought, that's what we are.
Right.
We're the Okima Prophets. We're sitting there babbling because I'm sure that guy thought what he was saying was profound and important. You know what I mean? As we do.
That's a great story. I never knew that. I always wanted to ask you that. Now I know. So tell us a little bit about the new record because it's been a while, right?
Yeah, it's been a while. I did my last record with the band was 7 years ago. It was called Every Part of the Buffalo. And that was focused on being, at that point, we were a 3-piece, very scrappy rock band. And then I decided to stop playing live. Another great career decision. I stopped live performance and then put out that record. So that was good. That was good. And then I was never going to make another record because I really do like my job, writing and producing for other people. I mean, that's my favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. I've always had a love-hate relationship with being an artist myself. But then COVID came, and that was weird, and I was sitting at home with more time on my hands than I'm used to, because I'm usually really, really busy, and I wasn't. But I had my own studio, and I had some friends with studios. Noel Levy had just built the great drummer, had just built a studio above his garage, so he could do drum tracks over there, and we've known each other long enough where I know he'll do what I want him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started making a record, and since I was never going to make another record, I called this record Half Past Never. So there's no reason for this record. I mean, it's not. I have no aspirations for it. The best of luck would be to get it used in, one of the songs used in a movie or something.
Right.
But I mean, I'm not going to tour it. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time promoting it or whatever. It's just an exercise in vanity, I guess, and boredom.
Well, but it's
fun.
I was thinking about it this morning with myself because I've got enough material for a new record, and it's, trying to put out your own records and then try to send them out to radio stations. And, as you well know, by the time you get the record done, you can record in your own studio, so you save money there. But in my case, you go and you get to whatever Creation or wherever you record at $75 an hour, then you pay the musicians, and then you've got to pay somebody to do the artwork and then press the damn thing. And by the time you get the actual disc back in the mail, you're completely fried and completely out of energy and money to do anything else with the record, except watch them stack up in your closet, right?
I'm telling you, my favorite day, this is why I like my job writing and producing for other people. The day I finish a record and the final mix is approved and everything, I'm like, good luck out there, kids. See you next year.
No.
I don't mean that in a cynical way. I'm just saying, Paul, I don't have it in me anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have it in me anymore to go do that stuff, and I respect the people that do it well. I just finished, or I'm just about to finish mixing the new Chris Koza record, and he makes it work.
Yeah.
But he's on his phone constantly, doing all the stuff you have to do, and I was never good at it. I remember I was working with this artist, and I was booked at the Star Tribune for not giving this artist more attention.
Mm-hmm.
This was many years ago. And I sent this email, a really bitchy email, to Chris Riemenschneider, and he replied to me, and he said, you really need to get a publicist because you suck at it. You're the worst publicist ever. And at first I was like, well, how dare he? But then I started laughing because I realized, oh my God, he's so right.
Yeah.
I am the worst at it, and I hate doing it. And so I never did it again after that. And every time I run into him now, I'm like, Chris, you saved my life. You were so right. And he was.
Well, it's funny. John Bream, I put out my first record in '84, and John Bream and the Star Tribune has always been pretty good to me. But occasionally, he'll take me down for whatever reason, and I guess it's his way of justifying give me press when he likes my shows or my records. And so I've always referred to him, and I signed that book I was telling you about to John Bream. I refer to him as 2 kudos and a bitch slap.
Exactly. You never know what you're going to get. He's usually been pretty cool to me. So has Chris, actually. They've both been pretty good. This last time I talked to Bream was, but again, this is my favorite part of my life and my job now. I don't have anything invested.
Right.
I don't have to kiss anyone's butt. I mean, if I produce a record and they give it a bad review or whatever, I don't care. It's not my record. I mean, I produced it, but it's not as personal as if you make your own record and then they say, you suck. I mean, that hurts.
Right.
But
right.
I just did that last Joanne Parker record. I did, and he just loved it. And he called me, and we were on the phone for an hour.
Yeah.
And during the whole hour, I was kind of sitting there in my mind going, where were you when I needed you? And then finally I was like, John, I got to go. Dinner's ready.
Well, we've all, anybody that's been reviewed has taken the slings and arrows of the good fortune or bad fortune that the writer will have towards you or me or our projects. But I remember back when City Page was called Sweet Potato. And
I remember that.
There was a fellow named Mark Gaddis who back in the 70s, when you put an album, that was a big deal because, first of all, who the hell presses LPs? We didn't even know where to do that. And he put out his first or second record. Then about a year or two later, he decided to re-release it. He sold out the initial pressing, did the same record with different artwork. And the woman that reviewed the record, the same record the second time, said, it's a very enjoyable record. But a great improvement over his last project, which tells you all you need to know about rock and roll critics. Kevin Bowe, tell us a little bit before we let you go about the song we're going to hear, California Sober, and who played on it.
Okay, so yeah, there is no Kima Prophets anymore. It's just me and whoever I can con into playing on the stuff or whatever. So this song happens to be Noah Levy on drums, and then the reason the chorus sounds so cool is my neighbor, Tim O'Regan from the Jayhawks, and most people know him as the drummer for the Jayhawks.
Oh, yeah.
But he is an amazing singer. I mean, I use him to sing on so many records I produce because he's just supremely gifted. He's like Beach Boys in a box. He has that just beautiful, shiny, sunshine Beach Boys harmony thing just nailed. And so he did the vocal harmonies, and then I did the guitars and the vocal and wrote it and did everything else. I play bass on my own stuff too now, whether I should or not. I usually do. Well, it's like, I have a bass.
Yeah, right.
There you go. So, but the song came out really cool, and then I did a video, which I've never really done like a video before. But you know Jeremy Ildesacker?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a great guitar player. I mean, he plays in the suburbs and all these other things. He's just a master. And I've been friends with him, and I decided to do a video for no reason, and I contacted a bunch of people. I found out who was doing videos in town, and I got turned down by all of them. And I started looking in the mirror and going, come on, it's not that bad. What's happening here? And I guess they were busy, or they didn't think I was cool enough or whatever, which I don't blame them. But I talked to Jeremy, and he was like, yeah. And he shot this video, and I love it. And I loved the experience. It was fantastic. If I'm going to do another one, I would call him in a minute, and everyone else should call him too.
If people want to buy the record, are you going to have them at the Fetus?
No, I'm not going to press. It's just going to be online. If someone
cool.
is that much of a stick in the mud that they don't that they have to have a CD, they could contact me off my website, and I suppose I'll burn them one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because why not? Who cares? But yeah, it's just going to be online. So the single comes out Monday.
All right.
And California Sober, and then the rest of the album will be about a month after that. But I think I sent you, because you were my good friend Paul Metza, another song that nobody's heard yet called I Hate Falling in Love.
Okay.
And I just, for some reason, knowing you as well as I do and for as long as I do, that's the one I picked. That song is kind of me pretending to be Harry Nilsson.
Beautiful. Well, we will listen to that next. Kevin Bowe, and that's Bowe, an old friend of mine, and has that same hardened, grizzled look at the music business, yet here we are still surviving, right,
here
Kevin?
We are. Too dumb to quit.
Well, you have give my best to your lovely wife, Ruth, and I look forward to seeing you in person here soon. Good luck with the project, and thanks for spending time on the Wall of Power Radio Hour.
My life just to find a kind of way to make it all right again. But the party's never over, 'cause I'm California sober, living in between the in-between. We could spend my daddy's money, but I'll never let you love me, 'cause no one's gonna break my heart to me. Yeah, I said I'd call you back, but I never said when. Said you never wanna see me again. Can't you give me just a minute? Let me take a breath. Might take a little more than I got left tonight. But the party's never over, 'cause I'm California sober, living in between the in-between. We could spend my daddy's money, but I'll never let you love me, 'cause no one's gonna break my heart with me. No one's gonna save me, and I've been thinking lately, aren't you tired of trying anyway? California sober, living in between the in-between. We could spend my daddy's money, but I'll never let you love me, 'cause no one's gonna break my heart but me. 'Cause I'm California sober as can be.
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. My guest on the other line, all the way from the Twin Cities, my old buddy, Mr. Rob Hillstrom. He has a great show tonight. It's the 18th annual tribute to the Last Waltz at the Fitzgerald Theater. Years and years it's been at the Caboose. And we'll have Mr. Hillstrom tell us all about Tribute to the Last Waltz. First of all, good evening, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Paul.
Oh, we're happy to have you. Now, I was honored to play Eric Clapton a couple of times at the Caboose, the tribute to the Last Waltz. But tell us, how did the whole idea come to you when you put on your first show 18 years ago?
Well, about 18 and a half years ago, I was doing some session work out at the old Flight Time Studios out there in Edina. And I was outside taking a smoke break and talking to a friend, and I'm like, I'd love to do a tribute show that incorporates people from every scene in this town, because it seems like there's all these different scenes, and people know each other in their different scenes, but they don't always work across those scenes.
Right.
So my idea was to get everybody together, and got lucky, and it worked.
So let's talk about, before you tell us who's on tonight's show, who are, besides myself, who else have you had play as the different performers recreating the 1976 performance of the band at Winterland in San Francisco, filmed by Martin Scorsese, called The Last Waltz? Over the years, who have you had perform?
Oh, we've had everybody from Eric Koskinen playing Bob Dylan to Adam Levy, who's coming back this year. Oh boy, and of course Paul Metza playing Clapton a couple times.
That's for sure.
And,
further on up the road.
Yep, and we've had like Haley Bonar and several local nationally known artists as well. So
now this year you've got a stellar lineup. You also have a ringer from out of town, the drummer from Mo, one of the big jam bands in the country. Tell us about that hookup.
Yes, we do. So Mark Grunhofer, who is, as we know as Mark Joseph in his performing name, is involved in the show this year, and he performs in a band with Vinny Amico, as well as a couple other guys from Mo and other various groups. I think sometimes they have Jason Hahn in there, and so it's kind of this super group. And so they are actually going to be the Dire Wolves, they're called, and they're going to be opening up the Friday, January 27th show. And we're excited to have them. And it also includes their singer is coming too as well. And so the guitar player singer, and he's going to be doing various guest spots as well as Neil Young one night.
So it's going to be at the Fitzgerald Theater. Now I know Mark Joseph recently performed there with the Big Woo.
Yes, he did.
Their 30th anniversary.
I filmed that.
You were, you and I, my last recording project I did in Minneapolis, which was my last recording project in Minneapolis, you and I went over to your studio in St. Paul right before the lockdown, because I mean, literally things were going to get locked down, and I had this song called "You Can't Be Brave If You're Not Scared," and we knocked that out in the early evening, which you can find on YouTube, by the way. But you wear a lot of hats. Not only are you a great keyboard player and played with a bunch of bands over the years, but you're currently occasionally playing with the Samples, that jam band out of Colorado, correct?
Absolutely. So I am their sub keyboardist, and they've been flying me out of town to do weekend gigs. And if you don't know about the samples, look them up. They got pretty well known in the 90s. I know they played here a lot at the Zoo Amphitheater in First Avenue. In fact, they still have a star up on First Avenue.
Good for them. Now, I see, too, I was looking at the poster for tonight's show. Your son Connor is playing.
Yes, he is. And we've had him do the Dr. John before. And he does the piano part, and Joe Dunn does the singing. Because as great a piano player as Connor is, he's not a vocalist yet. Kind of, so we help him out there. And we have Joe Dunn from Frog Lake teaming up with him.
Cool. And I'm just trying to think. Now, I see Wayne McFarland's on the bill. What's Wayne going to be doing?
Yes, Wayne is going to be doing Muddy Waters.
Well, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's great to have him, of course, from the famous Minnesota ipso facto.
Oh, absolutely. One of the original family bands, along with the Steele family, in terms of great Minneapolis-based.
Absolutely. We have Alex Steele is on this as well.
Now,
yeah.
Is he the son of one of the elders?
I believe son or nephew.
Okay.
And he used to play in a band called Roster McCabe, which was very popular in town.
Now, Rob Hillstrom, who else? I mean, you and I have known each other for years, but who else have you played with?
Well, I go back. I mean, back when I think I first met you, I was playing with a band called the Goonie Birds, which was
That's right.
a Grateful Dead jam band. We used to do every Tuesdays at the old 400 bar. That shows my age a little bit. And, and various people along the ways I've filled in from everybody from, Lamont Cranston. I've done a lot of work with G.B. Layton. So I kind of bounce around this town a little bit as well as getting out of town.
I remember when I was making one of my many comebacks over the years, and I was doing Tuesday nights at Bunkers, and I had him put in the paper because G.B. Layton was, he was like Elvis at that time, and packing the place every time he played. I had him put a tagline for, I think I was playing as Paul Metz of the Naughty Pines, and that was Naughty. And, back then I'd lived in New York and came back, and I wasn't really on the scene. So there was like a generation of people that didn't know who I was. So I just had him tag the ad. I said, Paul Metz, like G.B. Layton, only older. I don't know if it really helped bring out folks or not. So
you might have disappointed a couple people, but
I always manage to disappoint someone.
GB Bryan, he's been on the show too. He's done Dylan before on our show. And,
who's doing Dylan this year?
So we got Adam Levy doing it.
Oh, Adam Levy. Well, that's perfect. I know for years you had Dan Israel.
Yes.
You've got to get Martin Devaney on there to do Dylan one of these years because...
he would be another... there's so many people in town.
How many musicians do you think over the years that have been through the Last Waltz team?
Oh, boy, I need to make up a list because, I've had different band members over the years. It's and different guests. It has to be... at least 50, 60 people by now, if not more.
Wow. And so what is now, it's really 2 nights this year, isn't it? Is it?
Yes, it's January 27th and 28th.
Okay, January 27th and 28th. So, I was assuming it was tonight, but it's actually next week. So this is perfect. What, So, and you also, let's put a little plug in, you and I are Facebook buddies, and you're also selling pianos. Let's talk a little bit about that piano store because if I was
where I am right now. And they're kind enough to let me take off for a second here to do this interview. But I've started taking over as the manager here at Jim Lob's Pianos in Roseville, Minnesota, and we sell pianos all over the country.
Well, that's actually a perfect job for you because you're number one. You've got such great personality. You're a great piano player, and I hope they let you get in a little later, like they don't open at 8 a.m. or anything.
No, I get to start at noon, so it's a perfect musician's gig.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, any of us would scare the hell out of people if we showed up at 8 o'clock behind any counter anywhere.
Yeah, that would not be productive.
So, and you hooked up with Mark Joseph on this, and have you
Yes,
worked
we
with
did.
Mark before on any events?
Yeah, so we also do the Momentary Lapse of Pink Floyd tribute.
Oh yeah, let's
And,
talk about that for a bit. That's an interesting
Yeah,
show.
we're actually coming back to the same venue, the Fitzgerald Theater again this year, doing March 3rd, 4th, and 5th, doing The Wall with the Twin Cities Ballet.
Wow.
Yeah, and we did it the first time last year, and I tell you, Paul, it was one of the most amazing experiences next to doing the last waltz. Yet after that first show, because getting all that music in sync with the dancers, and when that stage curtain closed after the first show, the dancers and the band and everybody jumped up and down screaming in celebration.
That's beautiful. Now tell me, you're a Pink Floyd fan. I've listened to him because you can't turn on the radio and not hear 50 years of Pink Floyd on the radio. But tell us that Dark Side of the Moon, have you ever watched it now along with The Wizard of Oz? Because tell us the myth about that and if it's true or not.
Absolutely. We have done it. There are, of course, you get some happy accidents, but, the Alan Parsons who mixed it says he has no knowledge of that happening. So I would think he would know. I just think it happens to be a real happy accident. But we have also found that it syncs up really well with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
And so they're both, The Wizard of Oz and 2001: A Space Odyssey, are both about the same time as the playing time on Dark Side of the Moon.
Pretty much, if you to get to the space sequence at the end, then we play Echoes, which is like 20 minutes, and that fills up that space sequence perfectly.
You know, you musicians, you're all completely insane. You know that, of course.
Absolutely. Takes one to know one.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, Rob Hillstrom, an old buddy of mine, and a neighbor there for a few years when you moved into Northeast. I want to wish you luck on the show coming up next Friday and Saturday at the Fitzgerald Theater. Tribute to The Last Waltz with some incredible Twin Cities musicians and some ringers from out of town. Best of luck with that, Rob. And the next time I get down to the Twin Cities, I'm going to call you up and let's go have a lunch and a beer or two.
Please do, and everybody come down because this is the sing-along show of the year.
I like that, the sing-along show of the year. And you know what? I had no less of authority than the great Pete Seeger tell me, and now this, I want to say Paul McCartney told me once to don't keep dropping names like be such a name dropper, but Pete told me if you get more than 10 people in a room together and you're performing, have them all sing along in at least one song. So go out to the Tribute to Last Waltz, the great sing-along show of the year at the Fitzgerald Theater, 27th and 28th in beautiful downtown St. Paul. Rob, have a great night, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metza, engineered by John Sarista. We'd like to thank our guests, Kevin Bowe and Rob Hillstrom. I'd like to remind you my book, Alphabet Jazz, Poetry, Prose, Stories, and Songs is out. You can buy that and the companion CD at the Electric Fetus or order it on Amazon. I will also be performing at the Women's Club March 25th for SMA, Sue McLean Associates, produced series of shows called the Music and Storytellers Series. Follow me at paulmetza.com. Hope everybody's enjoying the new year. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.